Hello everyone, my name is Alia Dawood Allami, a master's student at Istanbul Yenizil University. My subject is about translated anthology as mosaic, anthologized English translations of Arab adaptations of Oedipus. The, the general constructions of mosaic as a paradigm of image creations. If we type the word mosaic in Google search engine, we find a great diversity of things encompassed under the generic umbrella of word mosaic, such as solar panels and other web browsers. While the term mosaic is referred to a limited number of artifacts and artworks, in terms of design and decorations, mosaic is generally implicating a pictorial discipline. In terms of practice, it obviously appears as preservations and continuations of an old technique practiced by ancient Mesopotamia and Byzantine Empire. However, according to research conducted by Italian and French scholars, mosaic has a particular methodology. From this perspective, mosaic is considered as a language by itself, with its distinct formal grammar modulations, fragmentations, and repetitions based on a cumulative process of compositions and constructions. As a result, it has a linguistic power far beyond its historical context. In his text, Mosaic Thought, Abadal emphasized that mosaic in his historical origins is considered as a mental activity. It is not specific to a particular genre. According to Abadal, mosaic should no longer be conceived as an art piece as it requires a philosophical approach rather than an art historical context. For him, mosaic is mainly a conceptual phenomena. Abadal observations are helpful in comprehending mosaic as a dynamic process encompassing multiple facets of our world. According to Marvel Carlson, he has acquainted the Western community in the West with four Arab translations of Oedipus. He singles them as the best adaptations of Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, and anthologizing them in a book entitled The Arab Oedipus for Plays, which consists of the English translations of four Arabic Oedipus adaptations compiled by its editor Marvel Carlson. The plays included in the anthology are King Oedipus, adapted in Arabic by Tawfiq al-Hakim and translated into English by W.M. Hitchens, The Tragedy of Oedipus, adapted into Arabic by Ali Ahmed Bakati and translated into English by Dalia Basuni and Marvin Carlson. The Comedy of Oedipus, adapted into Arabic by Ali Salim and translated into English by Pereira Kachia and Desmond O'Grady. And Oedipus, adapted by Walid Khlasi and translated into English by Admir Gore. It is worth to note that the reinterpretation, rewriting, and deconstructing reading of canonical texts become a prominent tradition in Arab world. Many Arab dramatists have deconstructed all dramatic subjects and rewriting them with an Arabic twist. In the regard of such Arabic forms of Oedipus are authentic. It is important to note that these versions, to greater or lesser degree, are prominently differ from the original versions in content and historical approach. This study is focused on rewriting, translations, and anthologizing of Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. The key ideas used in this research came from the fields of literary and translation studies. According to Lefebvre, rewriting is a process of writing created by those who do not write literature but rewrite it. Lefebvre introduced two forms of rewriting. The first form is introduced translation as rewriting. The second form is the historiographies, critics, and other types of reference works. In this regard, rewriting represents all components that concern the formations of the image of the writers as well as the work of literature within the target culture. According to Lefebvre, both the choice of the source text and the strategies of manipulating and writing are determined by certain patronage and poetics, who will establish the rewriting and retranslations to different uses. As a result, rewritings intentionally mark the time period by distinguishing themselves from the earlier versions through varied discursive strategies and translations. Lefebvre, he argued that rewriters are responsible for general receptions and survival of works of literature among non-professional readers, who constitute the great majority of readers in our global culture. From this perspective, the emphasis was placed on the theories that regard translations and anthologies as rewriting tools. It could be suggested that Lefebvre's ideas of rewriting has a powerful expressions for the mediate tendency of people general comprehending of literary literature, and by implication their understanding of canonical writing. Baker stated that the canon of the world literature is based on the continuous use of translations. This leads translators affects the cultural heritage of the source and the target cultures. Accordingly, anthologies by design may have a canonizing objectives, which acts as a powerful instruments in canonizations of the authors and the text. This leads translators to affect the cultural heritage of the source and the target culture. Anthologies share with translations texts that follow earlier texts, both logically and chronologically. However, in both cases, the texts are recreated and arranged at the same time, as well as the functions of the text is altered. Anthony Pine, on his part, stated that translation anthologies are not a subset of one activity or other. They belong to intersections of translating and anthologizing. In turn, anthologies collect literary texts that were not known before and give them new status. It is important to note that the anthologies of translated literature might deserve a particular consideration because it integrates both translation activities and anthologizing process, which assumes selections and modifications according to the target culture. This feature gives the anthologies of translated literature double functions, which leads to impact the complete literary productions. In the case of anthologizing the translations of Arabic Oedipus, the texts are collected from their natural context and of the original language and placed into another environment whereby they interpreted differently. By such selections, they are bestowed a new meaning and characteristics or values, generally by another person different from their original author, possibly the translator, who clarified them according to his ideology. Tawfiq al-Hakim, King Oedipus, depicts an Arab Oedipus who combines features of both the Greek tragic presentations and the Arabic cultural heritage. In reconsidering and adapting the Oedipus legend, Al-Hakim desired to parallel the cultural sources by combining the Islamic and European thoughts to produce an Arabo-Islamic Oedipus figure who confesses his human error but not renounce his divine inspirations. The conflict between man and truth takes the place of the original conflict between man and fate. Al-Hakim tried to eliminate all the Greek mythological components from the play in order to construct an Arab Oedipus whose conflict could be perceivable by Arab audience. His Oedipus is a thoughtful king who owes neither mythological magnificence nor heroic merits. For this reason, he has neither solved the riddle nor called the Sphinx. Al-Hakim's Oedipus has not possessed the Greek superstitious beliefs that rejected by the Arab or Islamic mentality. He has deprived his Oedipus of his mythical magnificence and bestowed him with another glory personified in his humanity. Al-Hakim desired his Arabic version of Oedipus to be human drama material. It could be argued that it deals with politics more than philosophy. Tiresias schemes for Oedipus' downfall, and he appears as an operator who manipulates the prophecy and the oracle revelations. In other words, he appeared as a political conspirator and operator of Oedipus' fate and destiny, not as a religious visionary as in the original play. In human level, the play contradicts the fatalistic Steven Greek origin, and Tiresias manipulated the actions, while in tonality, the play evokes an unexpected tonality. Ali Ahmed Bakathir's tragedy of Oedipus is directly motivated by the political events of the time. The defeats of Arab armies in Palestine in 1948. Although Al-Hakim in his versions insisted to use the Islamic spirit in his critical concept of drama, Bakathir was more devoted to Islamic conviction in his play. Bakathir's play demonstrates an Oedipus who beings as a kind of proto-Marxist, an atheist who preaches social justice and confiscated the goods of temple to distribute to the people. Although Oedipus beings as an atheist who denounced the religions and appropriated the temple gods, claiming a social justice, he ends up as a typical Muslim leader. Bakathir named his version of Oedipus a tragedy. In fact, it's more closer to comedy than Hakim's plays. If it's not in tonality, at least in the Dantean sense of narrative that ends in the redemptions for its protagonist. The comedy of Oedipus by Ali Salim demonstrates a radical disappearance of the dramatical traditions, a scathing political satire. It was presented in 1974 with a great success. He alters from Greek to Egyptian Thebes. He inspired by Oedipus and Akhenaton, the book written by Emanuel Velikovsky, in which he stated that the theory that the life of the visionary pharaoh was the original inspirations for Greek myth. In his play, Salim demands for new orientation, rejections of depending on a heroic savior, and calls for people to take their own fate by their own hands. The play far from the traditional story. In spite of all the main characters are presented, Oedipus does not murder his father or marry his mother. Jocasta also does not commit suicide, nor Oedipus blind himself. The only common point with the original myth is that Oedipus' encounter with the Sphinx, in spite of the play, is frankly named comedy, and the comic tune seemed along the play, but the play ends in a recognizable dark note said by Tiresias after the death of Creon. The play, in fact, carries the features of both the comedy and political satire. Like Salem, Ikhlasi used the traditional story as a theme of departure. He emphasizes only in a single part of the story. In Ikhlasi's main prophecy, suitable to the late 20th century style, through the supercomputer, the myth is hardly transposed to reflect the conflict between the man and electronic brain. The Delphic oracles is uttered by the computer, and Oedipus' character is transposed to a modern university professor named Sofyan. The computer analyzes the data which provided by Sufyan and makes a strange prophecy. As he will kill his son and get a child from his daughter, Oedipus unconsciously perpetrated two awful sins, incest and infanticide. Furthermore, he cannot avoid his destiny. Although the great departure from the Greek tragedy, Sufyan appears like Greek Oedipus. He is controlled by destiny. The Arabic perceptions of Oedipus are diverse in tone. They recreate the elements of tragedy as a genre. The Arab playwrights appropriate the original text to be adjacent to comedy more than tragedy. They are altering from dark fatalism of Sophocles to tragic comedy tune as in Al-Hakim and Bakatir's version, to hilarious phrases as in Salem versions, and cover different times and space. Some epochs from Thebes of ancient Greek to Egyptian pharaonic Thebes, and to modern time from the computer laboratory. They replace the Delphic oracles and predictions, the fatal prophecies to the political conspiracy by the corrupt routine and to computer prophecy. Furthermore, the Arab dramatists eliminated the metaphysical components of Sophocles' Oedipus. They made an ideological shifting from metaphysical elements to the Western tragic genre into acts of will. Gods are not represented in the plays. The Sphinx has appeared as an ordinary lion, as a false lion, and a metaphor of fear and a computer device. They eliminated the superstitions domain and asserted the mental domain, represented in the realistic perspective that the people are manipulated by the ideological power. The Arab Oedipus reveals his predicted as an ordinary human being rather than a glorified king. The Arab Oedipus appeared as a contemplative king who oozed neither mythological glory, the superstitious beliefs that spurned by Arab or Islamic mentality, nor hero qualities. Oedipus has neither solved any riddle nor called any sphinx. Oedipus stripped from his mythological glory and bestowed with human glory. His limitations emphasized in Islam, the God allows a free willing subject within the limitations of heavenly will. The contribution of Arab Oedipus for plays to the literary canon by creating a contemporary, a new image of Sophocles' Oedipus, which made the confrontations with the West take a different avenue. The cross-cultural negotiation between the Western and Arab cultures. In the virtue of these cultures are accepted other works of literature. The Arab writers manipulating Sophocles' Oedipus by inserting satire, parody, and storytelling within the original story. As a result, the Western drama and the Arabic traditions are amalgamated together. At the same time, Western editors and translators are translated back and anthologized these Arab adaptations into English language. Through translations, adaptations, and anthologies, the two cultures embraced each other's literary works. Remarkably, the stereotypical cultural ideology between the West and the Arab culture is diminished. The concepts of Western culture hegemony versus the Arab culture inadequacy. The equivalent cross-cultural negotiations is required and has been established. Marvel Carlson stated that these dramas might these dramas provide a model and inspirations for European authors to revitalize their own relationship to the ancient story of Oedipus. Caroline Johnson argued that the West and the Islamic world simply to intertwine it to be separated in such a way, and each of them was a complex entity, mosaic to use a popular metaphor with important historical evaluations. Thank you for listening.